We live in a world that tries to convince us we are safe. We have locks on our doors. We have security cameras. We have lights that banish the darkness. But the stories you are about to hear tonight prove that safety is often just an illusion. Tonight, I've collected 3 harrowing true accounts from people who stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back. First, a grocery store worker realizes that the empty parking lot outside isn't as empty as it seems. Second, a police officer responds to a call that defies logic, leading to a discovery inside a silent house that peels back the layers of human depravity. And finally, by Armamai, a young man on a farm encounters something that physically shouldn't exist, something that can walk through walls and paralyze you with a single look. So, get comfortable. Check your locks one more time and let the darkness in. Here are 3 true scary stories from the night shift. This happened back when I was 26. At that age, Halloween starts to lose its magic. It becomes just another day on the calendar. For me, it was just another night of work. I was working the graveyard shift at a large chain grocery store. My hours were 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I was a stalker. If you've never been inside a supermarket after hours, it's a strange place. Without the customers, without the music, the building feels enormous. It feels like a cavern. You can hear the hum of the refrigerators from 3 aisles away. You can hear the building settling, the pipes groaning in the silence. I arrived at work around 9:45 p.m. The drive there was eerie enough. The streets were completely dead. No cars, no trick-or-treaters, just empty sidewalks under the orange glow of streetlights. Our store was situated in a massive lot, isolated from the main road. As I parked my car, I looked out at the vast stretch of asphalt. It was pitch black, save for a few flickering lights near the entrance. I clocked in, locked the automatic doors manually, and started my routine. I enjoyed the solitude. I put one earbud in, listening to a podcast, and got into a rhythm. The first hour passed without incident, just the sound of cardboard ripping and cans clinking. Around 11:30 p.m., I went to the front of the store to grab a bottle of water. As I walked past the large glass windows, something caught my eye. Movement. I stopped and squinted into the darkness. Standing near the cart return, about 50 feet away, were 4 figures. They were motionless. Even from this distance, I could tell they were wearing costumes. But they weren't festive. They were drab, dark clothing, and what looked like featureless masks. My first thought was annoyance. Great, I thought, teenagers looking for a place to drink. But they didn't move. They just stood there, facing the store, facing me. I turned away, trying to brush it off. Don't be paranoid, I told myself. I went back to aisle 9, but the feeling of being watched started to itch at the back of my neck. It's a primal instinct, something left over from when we were prey. 20 minutes later, I couldn't help myself. I crept back to the front, staying low behind a display of soda bottles. My heart skipped a beat. They had moved. They were no longer by the carts. They were right up against the sidewalk, 4 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces, those plastic white masks, were pressed almost against the glass. They were looking for me. I realized then that none of them had bags. No candy, no booze. Their hands were empty, hanging loosely at their sides. I retreated to the back, my mind racing. Then, the sound came. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't a polite tap. It was heavy, deliberate. Someone banging their knuckles hard against the safety glass. The sound echoed through the empty store like a gunshot. I walked to the front, anger mixing with fear. I stood in the middle of the main aisle. "Store is closed," I yelled. My voice cracked slightly. "Cameras are on. Leave." The 4 figures didn't flinch. They just stared. The leader, a guy in a mechanic's jumpsuit and a clown mask, slowly tilted his head. It was a mocking gesture. I backed away. "Okay," I whispered, "I'm calling the police." I turned my back to them to head to the office. That's when the atmosphere shifted from creepy to life-threatening. Boom! The glass didn't just rattle, it shook the whole frame. I spun around. The leader had picked up a heavy metal trash can and hurled it against the door. Boom! A spiderweb crack appeared on the glass. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. This wasn't a prank. They were trying to get in. Crash! The glass gave way. The sound was deafening. I saw the four of them step through the broken frame, crunching over the shards. They didn't shout. They didn't scream. They just started running. Toward me. I didn't think. I turned and ran. I sprinted past the checkout lanes down the main aisle. I could hear their boots pounding the floor behind me. They were fast. I burst through the swinging doors of the warehouse. Hide or run, my brain screamed. I chose to run. I hit the panic bar on the rear emergency exit. The alarm blared, a piercing siren that finally broke the silence. I tumbled out into the loading dock. Slipping on the wet concrete, I scrambled up and ran toward the woods behind the store. I didn't stop running until my chest felt like it was going to explode. When the police reviewed the security footage later, they went silent. The video showed that while I was hiding in the woods, the four men had spent 10 minutes inside the store. They didn't take a single dollar. They didn't take any merchandise. They searched the aisles. They checked under the counters. One of them had a long, serrated knife that he had pulled from his belt. They were hunting, and when they couldn't find me, they calmly walked out the back door and vanished into the night. To this day, nobody knows who they were or why they chose me. I've been a police officer for 20 years. I've seen car wrecks, overdoses, domestic disputes. You get desensitized to it. But there is one night that I still can't talk about without needing a drink. I was a rookie, assigned to the night shift in a rural county. We covered a massive area, mostly farmland and woods. It was a lonely job. That night, a severe thunderstorm had parked itself over our town. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning dirt roads into mud pits. The power was out in half the county. The world was pitch black. At 02 hours, dispatch radioed me. It was Claire. I could hear the tension in her voice immediately. Unit 4, investigate a 911 hang-up. 400 block of Old Mill Road. Subject claimed kidnapping. But be advised, the caller sounded wrong. Wrong how? I asked, fighting the steering wheel against the wind. It sounded like a child, Claire said. But the cadence, the vocabulary, it didn't match. It sounded like an adult trying to mimic a little girl. Proceed with extreme caution. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the AC. I arrived on the scene 10 minutes later. My backup officer, Chris, was already there. The house was a wreck. Even in the dark, you could see the neglect. The porch was sagging. The windows were blacked out with tinfoil. It looked like a place where bad things happen. We approached the door, flashlights cutting through the rain. I knocked. For a long time, there was no answer. But I had that feeling, the feeling of being observed. I shined my light at the peephole. I saw the glint of an eye reflecting the beam, then vanishing. "Police, open up," I commanded. The door opened a crack. A man stood there. He was disheveled, smelling of sweat and stale food. He gave us a nervous smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Is there a problem, officers?" I questioned him about the call. He denied it. He claimed he lived alone, that he had no phone. But his eyes kept darting to the hallway behind him. Because of the urgency of the distress call, we pushed for a warrant. I got a judge on the line and obtained a telephonic search warrant right there in the rain. When we entered the house, the smell hit us like a physical blow. It was the smell of rot, of unwashed clothes, of decay. The living room was filled with garbage, pizza boxes from months ago, piles of magazines. But as I swept my flashlight across the room, the beam landed on something impossible. In the corner, pristine and white, was a rocking chair, and in it sat a doll, a life-size doll. It was dressed in a child's Sunday dress, perfectly ironed. I moved deeper into the house. The hallway was lined with them. Dolls, sitting on shelves, standing in corners. Their glass eyes seemed to follow us. I checked the first bedroom. It was set up like a nursery. But everything was oversized. An adult-sized crib, adult-sized bonnets hanging on the wall. "Clear," Chris shouted from the kitchen. But the house wasn't clear. I knew it. I found the basement door behind a tapestry. The homeowner, who had been passive until now, suddenly lunged at me. "No, you can't go down there. It's private." Chris tackled him, cuffing him to the stair railing. I drew my weapon and opened the door. The air rushing up from the basement was cold and damp. I walked down the wooden steps. They groaned under my weight. The basement was a labyrinth of hanging sheets and old furniture. Police department, if anyone is down here, make yourself known. Silence. Then, a small, high-pitched giggle. It came from behind a stack of crates. I moved slowly, gun raised. Come out! A figure stepped out into the light. It wasn't a child, it was a man. He was skeletal, pale as a ghost. He was wearing a dress. He looked at me with eyes full of terror, and then he opened his mouth. Are you here to play? The voice? It was high, falsetto. It was the voice of a little girl. I lowered my gun, realizing he wasn't a threat. He was a victim. We later identified him. He was a father of 3, missing for 2 years. The homeowner had kept him in that basement. He had brainwashed him, tortured him, conditioned him to believe he was a child. He wasn't allowed to speak in his deep voice. If he did, he was punished. The child on the phone hadn't been a digital distortion. It was this broken man, using the only voice he knew how to use anymore, to beg for help. We got him out. He's with his family now. But I heard he still speaks in a whisper, afraid that if he raises his voice, the man from the basement will come back. I grew up on a farm in Northern California. It sounds idyllic, and during the day it was. But at night, when the fog rolls in from the coast, the farm turns into a sea of shadows. I was 17. My parents were out of town, so it was just me and Aiden, the son of the farmhands who lived in the guest house, a converted barn about 100 yards from the main house. It was a Tuesday night. I remember the date because I had just finished my chores late. It was around 9:45 p.m. I was out by the stables, filling the water troughs. The only light came from the floodlight on the side of the barn, casting long, sharp shadows across the field. I sat on a hay bale waiting for the water to fill. It was silent, too silent. Usually you hear coyotes, owls, crickets, but that night, dead silence. Then I felt it. The hair on my arms stood up. I felt like I was being watched. Not just watched, studied. I slowly looked up. Across the pasture, right at the edge of the darkness where the floodlight faded, something was crouching behind an oak tree. It looked human-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. Its knees stuck up too high. Its arms were wrapped around the trunk, fingers looking too long. I thought it was Aiden. Funny, man, I muttered. I pulled out my phone and called him. Hello? Aiden answered. I could hear the sound of his Xbox in the background. Dude, stop trying to scare me. I see you behind the tree. What? Aiden laughed. Bro, I'm literally in a ranked match right now. Come to the window. I looked over at the guest house. I saw Aiden's silhouette in his window, waving at me. My stomach dropped. If Aiden was there, who was behind the tree? I looked back at the oak tree. The figure was still there. Aiden, I whispered, there's someone here. As if hearing me, the figure stood up. It unfolded itself. It just kept going up and up. It had to be nearly 7 feet tall. It was impossibly thin. Then it started to move. It didn't run like a person. It loped. It bounded across the field, moving away from me, toward the back fence. Adrenaline makes you do stupid things. I hung up the phone and chased it. Hey, I screamed, get off my property. I sprinted across the pasture. The thing reached the 6-foot wooden fence. It didn't climb, it didn't scramble, it just floated over it. One smooth motion, like gravity didn't apply to it. I reached the fence and looked over. It was standing on the gravel road, about 30 feet away. It turned around. The floodlight caught its face. It didn't have a nose. It didn't have a mouth. It just had 2 eyes. Huge, bulbous, milky white eyes. No pupils, just glowing white orbs. It stared at me. And then my body shut down. My vision started to tunnel. Black spots danced in my eyes. My chest tightened like a vice. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, unable to look away from those eyes. It felt like it was draining the energy right out of me. Then I blacked out. When I came to, Aiden was shaking me. Bro, wake up! The thing was gone. We went back to the main house. I locked every door. I loaded my dad's 9mm handgun and sat on my bed, shaking. I thought it was over, but around 2:30 a.m., I woke up. The house was silent. Creak! The sound of the back door opening downstairs. I froze. I knew I had locked it. I checked it 3 times, then came the footsteps. Heavy, wet, slap, slap, slap. They weren't walking around, they were coming straight for the stairs. I grabbed the gun, pointing it at my bedroom door. I wanted to scream, but my throat was closed shut. The footsteps came up the stairs. Slow, deliberate. They reached the hallway. They stopped right outside my open door. I stared at the empty doorway, finger on the trigger. Show yourself, I tried to yell, but it came out as a whimper. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. I could smell it, the smell of ozone and wet earth. Then the footsteps entered the room. Thump, right at the foot of my bed, the mattress depressed, as if someone or something invisible had just sat down. I stared at the indentation on the mattress, mere inches from my feet. I couldn't breathe. We stayed like that for what felt like an eternity. Me, with a gun pointed at nothing, and an invisible weight sitting on my bed. Then, the weight lifted. The mattress sprang back. The footsteps turned around. They walked out of the room, down the hall, down the stairs, and the back door clicked shut. I didn't sleep for a week. I still live on the farm, but I put motion sensor lights everywhere. And sometimes, late at night, I see them turn on, one by one, tracking something walking across the yard that I can't see. There are things in this world that we aren't meant to understand. We build our fences, we lock our doors, but sometimes the darkness finds a way in. Which of these stories unsettled you the most? Was it the silent stalkers at the grocery store, the basement of broken dolls, or the invisible visitor at the farmhouse? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have a story, something you can't explain, something that keeps you up at night, send it to the email in the description. Because you never know, your nightmare might be the next one I share. If you enjoyed the fear, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have much more to explore in the dark. Stay safe out there, and remember, check your back seat, check your closets, and never, ever assume you're truly alone. Good night.